Hello and welcome to the final vlog of my graduate school career. I think it's a very fitting assignment to end being a student of yours, Dr. Williams. So yeah, thank you. So I had never learned very much about the Hawaiian language in general, or about Pidgin, and or as Thomas Yokota calls it, Hawaii Creole, which I also hadn't heard that term before either. So the past couple of weeks that we've been learning about this is honestly pretty brand new to me. I have never visited Hawaii before, and I just didn't know much about the language, so I thought it was just a really cool thing to be learning about it. It sort of seems like a little bit abstract and niche in my mind, and then I think about how this is a state of the United States, and of course there's a whole host of problems that go along with that history, but it's something that we really should be learning about because these are citizens of this country, and their language has a lot of history and has a lot of culture behind it. So again, I was grateful to learn about this in general. One of the main themes that is talked about in these articles is the fact that society, the dominant society, places such higher value on standard English in almost every social setting, especially in education. And we are taught very early on that standard English is professional. It is what should be used to sound educated and intelligent, and it's what should be used in schools. So we are looking down on non-standard forms of English, and students know this. And like I said, they're taught this from a very early age. So when we have research that's looking at attitudes about those perceptions, about members of the dominant society's perceptions about non-standard English, and especially those in positions of power in education, we have research that's telling us that these educators are just genuinely thinking less of their students. They have this deficit mindset. They're thinking less of their students that are speaking non-standard English. And that is just kind of a hard pill to swallow because these are children that we are talking about. And as a teacher myself, I know how important your perception of your students can be when it comes to their success, because whether or not most teachers like to admit it, you work for your students, right? You are somebody that is putting your entire career, your entire heart into the lives of your students. And if you have negative perceptions about your students, you're not going to be putting your heart into that work effectively, and essentially you're going to be doing harm. So I did really like that these articles looked at perceptions and also just highlighted with empirical data, in the case of Choi and Dodd, and more interview bases, that non-standard English is celebrated and or is not celebrated, and it really should be, because language is so closely tied to identity. So when we do not celebrate those non-standard English varieties, we're essentially telling students your identity is not as valid. So I particularly enjoyed discussions in general about societal attitudes, because I think it really opens your eyes to why we see so many of the harmful problems that we see in society. If we understand why people behave the way that they do and why people think the way that they do, then I think we learn a lot more in general. I particularly enjoyed the article, The Pidgin Problem, Attitudes About Hawaii Creole by Thomas Yokota. I think these interview methods of research are really interesting to me. They kind of humanize the research, and I just really like to hear perspectives from actual people. That's not to say that like what Choi and Dodd did with more like empirical data collection is not valuable, because it really is. The more that we have like evidence-based based reasoning behind what we're doing, and we can actually put, numbers out there that are pretty impossible to argue with, the more we can kind of speak from a more experiential and emotional perspective, which can kind of, like I said, humanize the issue. So one thing that I really liked that Yokota said was, although scholars argue that Hawaii Creole is a language, because their research rarely reaches the public, most people have created their own opinions of Hawaii Creole. I think that we, throughout the semester, have read so much research on the validity of non-standard forms of English, and it's just so interesting because that research is out there. And if every teacher was just exposed to this research, if everyone in positions of power in education was exposed to that research, I think we'd have a lot of different perspectives in terms of, like, hopefully growth perspectives towards the validity of those languages. And just the fact that most of the time people aren't reading this research, they just get stuck in their own opinions. And unfortunately, in something like language, when we have opinions about people's language, we are therefore having opinions about their identity, because language is so tightly entwined with identity. So when we have those opinions, negative opinions about language, and the child speaking the language, then we are devaluing the child as a whole. So I really wish that this research was not more accessible, because ultimately it's really accessible. It's easy to find this stuff if you look. But I hope that it was something, or I wish that it was something that was a little more required. Especially a lot of the stuff on, like, African American vernacular English. I wish that my colleagues would just read that more, and I really think that they would have a better understanding of their students, and really just not look down on the way that they speak. I just wish that for my colleagues. So when he said that scholars argue that Hawaii Creole is a language, but most people don't read that, that just really, like, stood out to me, because I just really wish that research would reach the public, especially educators as well. I really loved exploring the Pidgin curriculum. As a teacher who just really ultimately works with science curriculum, I really enjoyed going through that and seeing all of the different ways that we can reach students with this language, and also make students realize that their language is valuable, and there's intricacy to it, there are rules to it, there's vocabulary, there's all of these things that make it special and make it unique. And I don't know, I had a lot of fun really exploring that. I also think it was really cool how it initially looked at the history behind just colonization and imperialism in Hawaii in general. And it looked at, so there's a section titled How History and Language Connect, Setting the Stage for Pidgin. I think that looking through the history of all of this is absolutely the best place to start, because you understand the foundation and why this language began, why it evolved. And I think by understanding why it came to be, it solidifies that it is a valid, real language that should be treated as such, that it should be respected, and it should be celebrated as well. And it shouldn't be something that's looked down on by those who do not speak that language and instead are speaking the standard American English. So I thought it was interesting to go through that history. That's been one of my favorite things in this module, is learning about Hawaiian history, because I just hadn't really been exposed to it very much. And I was able to kind of talk with my husband, who's a history teacher, about that, and I just had no idea. I really didn't. And so I think that starting with history to explain where language came from can really offer a lot of power to that language in general. And then I don't know, you can see me looking at the curriculum and just kind of smiling. So the lesson, What Can You Do in Pidgin? That's lesson 3. It says to challenge stereotypes about what certain languages and people can do. That's the objective. And so it's not just looking at like history and rules of the language, but it's also about challenging stereotypes. And this is something like that I can see used in like the ethnic studies classes that we have really coming on the scene in high school too. So I just think it's really cool, and I'm really impressed by the people that created this. The last thing I wanted to talk about was the article Family Involvement in the Hawaiian Language Immersion Program. I loved learning about these Hawaiian language immersion schools. I did not know that the Hawaiian language was so uncommon up until some years ago, and people really took it upon themselves to revive this language, like truly bring it back to life. And I just really love that there are parents who they themselves can't necessarily speak Hawaiian, but they choose to send their children to a school where they can learn Hawaiian. I think that is brave, because there's also got to be a lot of vulnerability in that. And that was something that, like, some of the barriers that was discussed in that research, that the parents themselves couldn't speak the language. And so there was maybe like a little bit of isolation there. But the fact that these parents said, no, I want you to go and learn this language and kind of get this new piece to your identity, I think that that's a really beautiful thing. And like I said previously, we have learned so much about how language is deeply tied to identity. And so offering opportunities for students to celebrate their identity is beautiful. It's a really, really wonderful thing. And I hope that it's something that just continues to grow in Hawaii, and that these children have a future where Hawaiian is spoken all around them, and that it's not something that's rare, and that it's actually really common amongst Native Hawaiians. So I just wanted to end by expressing my gratitude to you, Dr. William. I learned so much in this course. I really even wish that it had been at the beginning of this program, because as somebody who only speaks standard English, I just didn't know as much about linguistic discrimination, and this course really asked me to examine my own biases when it comes to language. And I can really tell that prior to these courses, prior to this program, I would definitely in my mind look down upon people who are speaking non-standard forms of English, and think maybe that they weren't educated, or that they aren't being taught properly how to speak English. And that's of course so wrong. And I'm really excited to have the knowledge, the education, the research, the peer-reviewed literature, which I just adore having that in my pocket when I talk to my colleagues, and I can hear them mock students for the way that they speak, or get frustrated with the way that students speak and write. And now I'm kind of empowered with my education to have some hard discussions, and maybe call out some of these teachers, or at least bring to their attention that the language that our students are using is actually very valid, and it should be respected and celebrated, because that's what our students deserve. So thank you for that power that this course has given me, and thank you for being my teacher. I hope you have a great not just rest of the semester, but rest of your career. I really would love to work with you again someday, so we'll see if our paths ever cross. Thank you.